Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Shape the Podcast. You know me. My name is Kyle Waller. I'm your esteemed host on every episode, unless I want my wife to do one, which I need to get her to do one here soon. So we'll see. We'll see when she wants to do that. But hope you've all had a great Friday night so far. Heck, hope you had a great week. I know that it was long, um, but it was a good week. So, real quick, before I get to my guest for the evening, who is Miss Carrie Enstrom. Uh, Carrie is an awesome woman who I've gotten to know along with her lovely husband, Mark. Um, she'll be coming on and talking about her story, and then she'll get into her business, which a lot of you should know about, called the Bearded Flamingo Design. They do everything from shirts, hats, cups, koozies, all that stuff. But we'll get into that at the end of the podcast. First of all, I just want to say happy Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. Um, that's one thing that we here at Shape the Podcast do love is mental health. So happy Mental Health Awareness Month to all the guys out there. Happy Pride Month to all my friends who are LGBTQ plus. I stand with you guys. You guys are awesome. So happy Pride Month to all my fellows and ladies and everybody there. And then last but not least, before I start the real meat and potatoes of the show, happy Father's Day weekend to all the fathers out there. Especially, to my dad who's looking down upon me up in heaven. Happy Father's Day to him. But yeah, happy Father's Day to all the dads, whether it be, fur baby or real babies, aka kids, or grown ass adults now, part of my language. But happy Father's Day to all of them. But anyways, I'm not gonna beat around the bush anymore. I've done enough talking. I'm gonna let my guest do some talking. So without further ado, live from her studio, aka her car, all right, here she is, Carrie Enstrom.
Hi.
Hey, and
What's up?
I forgot to tell everybody that we were almost late coming on because we were talking about dogs and cats
Yeah.
prior to just a little bit, right? Because I was showing her my dog and one of my cats, and then she started talking about hers. But anyways, Kay, I know you, and some of my viewers know you, but some of my non-viewers, like British viewers, don't know you. So introduce yourself, tell people who you are.
I'm Carrie Enstrom. My husband and I run a small business out of our house called the Bearded Flamingo. Um, that we do with the bearding community mostly, but I do things around town, and I have other clients, obviously. But yeah, we have two beautiful children, 19 and 22, and they're doing great in their lives, and I couldn't be prouder. And yeah, Mark and I have been married for 26 years, just celebrated that milestone, and yeah.
So I'm guessing he's the flamingo and the British flamingo.
No, he's the bearded part. The flamingo actually came from my family. We had owned a bar for 29 years called the Flamingo Lounge. And so I wanted to do something to honor my family because most of them are gone. Both my parents are gone, and my grandparents, all of them. But so in honor of my family, and then bringing in the bearded aspect with the bearded, which has now all become family.
Yeah,
We felt the bearded flamingo was the best option for a name.
I like it. Well, some people are family, and some people are just ugly stepchilds. Let's just be honest.
Well, that's true. That's true. We do have a couple of those ugly step siblings, but
So
yeah.
let's since you're talking about family, um, and that's one reason why you're on tonight is to talk about that. Let's let's get into that. Let's get into your upbringing and things of that nature, and then we'll talk about the reason why I want you to come on.
Okay, yeah. So born and raised Kokomo, Indiana. Um, Mother, father, both gone, unfortunately. but I had there was 5 of us total sibling wise, and we grew up out in the country. They say I'm Gen X, and I was
Mhm.
definitely raised by the boomers. My mom was born in 43, my dad born in 40. Um, so, you didn't mess around, or you definitely knew the consequences. But growing up out in the country, we grew up on a big, reservoir out here. And so I have all of that experience. It actually snowed during the winters when I was little, so we got to go through all that. But the family owned a bar here for 29 years, and but alcoholism runs in on my side of the family. But it's all about breaking cycles when you get older.
Mhm.
And I was lucky enough being the youngest, and I was quite a bit younger than my siblings. Like, the next one up would have been 13 years older than me. So by watching that, I learned to watch triggers, and I always, when I hear the word alcoholism and it's spoken by somebody who didn't live it or has never lived around it, they don't quite grasp the full concept of it.
Mhm.
And sometimes they're very quick to throw the word out of alcoholic and stuff like that, which is fine.
Yeah.
um but until you live that and you see that, it's different when you haven't.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, like, my siblings are much older than I am. My middle brother, which is the reason I'm here, um, I remember him going into the Navy. He was a CB in the
CB.
Navy. Yes, that was basically the Navy's version of the Army.
Yep.
That's how he described it to me. But I was super little. Like, I was in kindergarten when he got married, and had his first kid. So, and he married a woman that he met in the Philippines while in the Navy. He
Wow.
They dated for like 2 weeks and got married, and he brought her home. So she lived with us for many years, while for like 2-3 years, while they were kind of moving him around a lot, and because she didn't want to go any she we didn't want her to feel lost having children, and my brother always being out on doing whatever he needed to do for the Navy. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, I like my niece Jasmine. She's like my little sister. So, because I remember every minute of when she was young, because I was there with her.
I was gonna say, are you guys are still close today? Like, you're pretty close.
Not as close.
All
I
right.
would like it to be, but she, and this is where it's different from when we grew up to how the kids are growing up now. She has her own life. She has her own kids. And I have found that life is so busy now. We don't, like, I remember every Sunday, everybody came home. We had a big dinner. We all hung out, the nieces and nephews would all play together. That was something we did. And
Mhm.
then, like, the next generation up, my nieces and nephews, less of us were around. My mom passed. When my mom passed, pretty much most of the family gatherings stopped,
Yeah.
you know, but like, you have to, if I feel like you have to plan for anything to happen, even if it's just them coming over for a coffee or whatever, because life has gotten so busy. Like, they say over in Europe, they have, there's a third place. In Europe, they always have that third place. And most Americans anymore, other than the gym, don't have a third place.
Mhm.
It's either home or work. And that's how I feel a lot of us are now, and
Well,
that's why
that
I
and
love the bearding community, because it allows us to have that third place with someone else, even if that third place moves around.
yep. Well, that and over in Europe, they actually take, like, they make everybody take a holiday
Yeah,
It
I
is
know.
like
And it's like
it is
2
a
and 3
man.
and 4 weeks.
Yes, and it is like it's like everything shuts down pretty much, and you take that time to either uh explore wherever you want to explore, or b just relax. You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, like,
yeah, and they get paid for it.
yeah, they
So
get paid for
yeah,
it, and it's like no big deal. Like, when my husband and I we went over to the Mediterranean when I was pregnant with my son. He had won a trip through work, and we went in. It was one of the places in France, where the Count of Monte Cristo's castle, the real Count of Monte Cristo's castle is. I can't remember the little city that we went to, but like we got there in the middle of a Sunday, and
mm-hmm.
like all the shops were shut down.
Yeah,
There was like, and it was just a quick excursion, just to walk around the city, just because we had just made port early or whatever. But a lot of the shopkeepers live in the buildings, so like we were watching people come down from upstairs and open up long enough for us to come in and browse and buy, and then as soon as the store was empty again, they'd lock the doors.
yeah, it's crazy, but
So
yeah, I mean
yeah.
that is the because I remember I'm 45. You know, I remember when I was a kid how how different it was. You know, now it's like, man, what like what happened to the years? You know, it's like
Yeah.
they don't slow down.
No, they don't.
Uh,
And it seems like it, and I noticed that after I had kids, how much quicker time seems to go, just
yeah,
because it's just like, because I can measure time in the growth of my kids, and I see how fast they're growing. Like my both, I'm a short woman. I'm 5'3". Everyone will tell you, my son and my husband will tell you I'm only 5'2". But like, and my husband, he's 6'4".
yeah,
My son is 6'2". My daughter is almost 5'8". So they all tower over me and call me little mommy. But you
yeah,
know
that's yeah, yeah.
but
It's
watching that growth in them is just it's humbling.
yeah. Well, that and I'm sure you know how you're talking about your brother who was in the Navy. Let's just get to that. You know,
Sure.
um, I'm sure that a lot of that growth probably happened after you know.
So I remember when he was in the Navy, his first real, like, being, um what's the word I'm looking for? I don't even know. Where they put him.
Oh, like his military occupation. That
Yes.
in
Like,
the army they call it the your MOS. I don't know what they call it now.
but yeah, so he, was down in Louisiana
Hmm.
that was his where he was first put, was down in Louisiana. And I remember going down to Louisiana and seeing him there, and and playing with Jasmine because I'd missed her, stationed. That's where he was
Yeah,
stationed. That's the word. Um, and then shortly after, so then I believe when she got pregnant with Maggie, her second child, they were back in Indiana for like a short stint. And then he was stationed in Oklahoma for quite some time. Um, and just going back and forth with that, I remember at a very young age watching his progression and watching their kids' progression. And it's he was good at his job when he was one of the highest functioning alcoholics I knew, if that makes sense. So like he actually functioned better with alcohol in his system than when it wasn't, as long as he wasn't drunk.
mm,
He had this sweet spot, and he was really good at keeping that sweet spot for when he needed to, but there was always those times when he didn't. And after the Navy, he came home, did a short stint here, with a job, and then he re-enrolled into the Army for 4 years. And then he got through that. That wasn't I'm trying to think. Trying to think of the years of where he was and when he was, because it was after he was done, he ended up in the National Reserves. And I remember one of the first times he didn't show up for his weekend soldier thing, and the police found him drunk in a park,
Mm-hmm.
and my brother having to go get him and stuff. And that was when Grace had decided she was done, and the kids were still young. The youngest, Basil, I think he was like 7 when they were divorced, and it was almost solely because of his drinking. He couldn't keep a job. Him and I had very good conversations. He was my favorite brother. When I was younger, you never have a favorite, but I did, because
I was my mom's favorite. Let's be honest. No, I don't think I was my mom's favorite at all. Um, so I think she favorited all her kids. Let's put it that way.
see, and I tell my kids I don't have a favorite kid because my kids are like night and day.
Yeah.
So it's like I love you both very much, but in very different ways.
Yeah, you tolerate them the same.
Exactly, I tolerate them the same. So, but yeah, it was many years later, and we sometimes knew where Jeff was and sometimes didn't.
Mm.
It was just depending on how good he was in with his girlfriend at the time, if he was at her house or if he was surfing couches.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2014, my brother, my oldest brother, got a phone call from the jail from one of his friends that was a police officer, actually, because he went out to detain Jeff for public intoxication at a park, at the Reservoir Park, where our childhood home was. And they're like, we really need you to come out here. We need you to come get him. He's saying that he's in trouble, that he didn't show up for his weekend duty, and that he was dishonorably discharged, this, that, and the other. So my brother goes and picks him up. He thanks the officer for the courtesy, and he moved my brother in with him. And he told him, and Steve, who came and got him, he's the oldest brother. And Steve is always about family first. And so, and him and Jeff very regularly got into it, but they always, got along for the sake of the family.
Yeah.
And so, but Steve moved him in, and he said, the only thing I'm going to ask you not to do is just don't drink. And so Jeff, for several months, almost for just over a year, he had done fantastic. Like, he was helping Steve keep the house clean. He was trying to find a job, and something just flipped in him. He wanted to see his granddaughter. It was her birthday, and Jasmine told him he could, as long as he was sober.
Mm-hmm.
But when he called, he had already decided to start drinking. He had gotten a hold of some alcohol, and she told him that he could not come over. And my brother comes home, and he just disappeared. And so my brother comes home, realized Jeff's not home, and realizes one of the guns is missing, and he found the empty alcohol bottles everywhere.
Mm.
So the first thought was that he went and pawned the gun to get more money to buy more alcohol.
Yeah.
That was the thought process for my brother. And so he goes out looking for him, and he goes to his girlfriend's house. Girlfriend hadn't seen him, but she had told Jeff the same thing. If you've been drinking, I don't want you here. So he didn't. So, Steve started cruising the roads, and he was a couple blocks away in his car. Jeff was in his car. He was a couple blocks away, and he had locked himself in the car. he was asleep. So Steve banged on the back windows and said, I know you're drunk, but let me take you home and get you warm. And Jeff just grumbled at him. And he goes, Jeff, it's December. It's like 20 degrees outside. Let me take you home and we can work through this.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeff goes, leave me the fuck alone. And Steve wouldn't, and he kept banging. And the next thing he knew, right in front of him, he sat up, put the gun to his head, and shot himself. Now, every door in his car was locked. That was the only reason Steve had been banging on the windows, is because he couldn't get in the car.
Mm.
And so he had to call 911 to come and help him. And it took like 15 minutes for someone to show up. And he's like, and they like went down the wrong road, and he's like, I saw them coming, and then they turned where they shouldn't have turned, and I went running after them trying to flag them down. And then once they got there, it took them another, I think, 20 minutes just to get in the car, because they didn't know if he was alive. And if he was alive, they knew he had a live firearm. So they had to be careful for themselves, which my brother completely understood.
Yeah.
But so when he got to the hospital, he was pretty much gone. He was still breathing, but even if they did surgery, he was already brain dead. So it wouldn't have done much of anything. There could have been a slight chance, but at that point, I mean, I saw how it was wrapped, and I saw where it was right here, right in the center. I mean, he got himself good. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
And so my brother had to tell them to go ahead and not revive him, because if he couldn't breathe, then he didn't want to prolong the inevitable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I don't know. Like you listened to my story about a month ago or so. It's like once you get to that point in your life, it's like you have to decide what's better, life or death.
Right.
But then again, like we were talking about, earlier, about how some of the veterans,
Exactly.
I mean, they get overlooked. And I get it. Some of these guys, they don't want to go to people, because you're a vet.
Yeah.
What you don't want to do is you don't ask for help, because that makes you look weak, right?
Exactly. And that's something that they
you served your country. You're mighty and strong, but then like you get out and you have all these post-traumatic stress disorders.
I mean, I remember watching him, around fireworks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would freak him out sometimes. It wasn't often. I really never saw the PTSD, but I think it was because he was mostly drunk.
Yeah.
It numbed his feelings, and I think that's one of the reasons he was so apt to it, because it numbed his feelings. It numbed the pain.
Yeah. And that's and I'm just gonna put this out there for anybody and everybody. Yes, you can drink. Anybody can drink, right? But don't drink to cover up the pain, because what's it doing? It's only causing you more pain.
It's only the inevitable is always going to be there.
Yep. I mean,
so until you either deal with it now,
reach out and get the help, it's still going to be there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's still going to be there, and the longer you put it off, most times the worse it gets.
Yeah, and that had to be your poor brother having to deal with that, and then know that there's nothing that he could have done at that moment, to rectify the situation, to make things better, and we always question ourselves after something bad happens, especially suicide. Well, what if I could have done something more, or what if I could have done something better? And,
Steve.
In our retrospective, when you did all you could, you you took him in knowing that more than likely things were going to happen. You know,
Right.
I mean, it. That's what stinks. You know, it's like you never know whether or not
Well, and when
what you're
it's your
doing is trying hard
family,
enough. Yeah,
and my brother, my oldest brother Steven, he was very much always, he's the most hopeful person I've ever seen. He'd hoped that bringing Jeff in would help get him on that right track finally.
yeah,
He thought maybe he's old enough, maybe it's been enough time. And him and Jeff actually got along. I'd never seen him get along for that long and that well.
mm,
And I know it devastated Steve, especially for it to happen right in front of him.
yeah. I mean, that's. But I mean, at least they had that. I hate to say it, but they had that little bit of that bond for a while.
Right, that one, that
So,
just over a year, yeah.
yeah. So, heck, I don't think there's been a year where me and my brother have gotten along. I have a twin, and he is. We're totally different from night and day, but I know as adults now we don't really talk that much, but we don't get along, and I'm gonna say it right now. I wish we did, you know,
Yeah.
but again, that there are action and consequences and behaviors of why we don't get along, you know.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's hard. Like unless you're there, unless you're in that person's shoes, like, especially for you, your family, you you dealt with his behavior, you know, during all this time. Unless you're really at the forefront and you're seeing it every single day, you don't know what to do. You don't know what to say. You know, sometimes doing what you think you should do and saying what you think you should say, sometimes it's not enough. Or sometimes, in this case, it was too much. If that makes sense, because what's one thing that we as humans don't like to hear over and over and over again?
Don't do something.
Yep.
But
Don't
yeah,
don't do it.
yeah,
Yeah.
he had been doing so well, and Steve, and I wonder if it was like, one of those things, because Jeff had always drank,
Hmm.
and I wonder if, because Steve was proud of him, and Steve had told him as much that he was proud of him.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if he was just like, you know what, I'm going to fuck it up. So let's just really fuck it up this time. And I could see my brother having that mentality. I can see Jeff
Hmm.
thinking to himself, I'm no good and I'm going to mess this up eventually. So I might as well just do it now and get it over with.
Yeah. And that's not the way that had I believe 100% truly that had there been more resources for him to get the help he needed, you know, and I'm just gonna say this right now: the men's mental health stigma it is spot on what is, because men do not like to ask for help.
No.
You know,
Well,
we're,
but you
we're
guys were raised that way. You
yes,
guys
well,
were raised to that you can't show weakness,
yeah,
that you're in charge, and that's now our jobs
yeah,
to say, look, everybody needs help,
yeah,
and it's
it's
okay to ask for help.
yeah. No, nothing wrong with reaching out and saying, "Hey, I need help." Now, yes, um, there is I like to call it the boy who cried wolf syndrome,
Yeah.
to where you have the same person over and over again saying, woe was me," and that's just because, yes, you have to put in the work to make your life better,
Yes.
because if you don't
And
put in
it's not an easy
yeah,
it's not an
no,
easy task.
I mean, my wife will tell you that, I am putting in the work every single day to make my life better, but that will never stop, because we as humans, we always try to be better than we were the day before, right? You
Right.
know, and that's one thing I don't like with today's society, is I don't think that the vets get enough help by any
No,
means, you
I
know.
don't think they do either by any means. And I think it's sad when a country who touts having the largest military and spends as much as like the next 33 countries combined in military cannot do anything for these veterans after they've used them up and spit them out.
Yeah.
They spend more money on illegal immigrants than they do on the people who make our country great, who really do fight for us.
They spend more money on going overseas to help out other countries, when in all retrospective, shouldn't we be helping our own?
Exactly.
Like it's things haven't gotten things gotten better since COVID? Yes,
No.
we're all back to work now. Everybody's back to work, but then people have now found out that they can sit at home and do this and make a living out of it.
Yeah.
And so now you have businesses hurting. Now you have more homeless, because let's be honest, since COVID, the homeless numbers have went up. The veteran suicides have went up. Suicides in general have went up, simply because the people that normally have the resources to offer the help, they don't have it anymore.
No.
Because it's and we won't talk about that. That's a whole different ballgame.
Like I say, that's a whole
yes,
that's a whole other can of worms right there.
Yes, we could totally. And I think one of these days I'm going to actually have a panel of people on, and we'll have a spirited discussion about that. And I will have on everybody from any walk of life. Because it's just one of those things.
That's what we need to get back to. Is having a spirited conversation.
Yeah.
Walking in, I'm your friend, you're my friend. I may not agree with you on this, but I agree with you on that. That doesn't mean that I don't like you anymore. Just because your opinion is we need to get back to conversating with each other instead of hiding behind like keyboards and stuff, and shooting off nastiness. The world needs a better attitude. It really, we're all in this together. Why should we make it harder for each other?
Yeah.
I see this all the time, and I do this myself. I always smile at people. If I make eye contact with somebody, even if I don't know them, I try to smile or I nod my head.
Yeah.
When I'm at work, if somebody comes, I try to chat up the older people, because I know that they don't get a lot of that. Mm-hmm. I don't even get a lot of that. I'm 46 years old, so I it's just treat people with basic respect.
Yep.
And hi, how you doing? You having a good day? Or, man, it's cold outside. That little bit of conversation for someone could make their entire day.
Yeah, that's what I've talked about that before, like, or I like to call it the good morning thing. You say good morning to somebody, and could that start a conversation of real seriousness? Yes. Could it start a conversation of don't talk to me? I haven't had my morning coffee. But you just by saying hello or good morning, whatever, you could change that person's day like that.
Smiling at him, telling them, hey, that's a really pretty dress, or that's a nice shirt, or, and I because I get guys who come through with some beards. I always try to compliment the guy's beards. Like, hey, I really like your beard. Have you ever thought about going to a beard contest? Or, I try to do it with a little bit of everybody, just because somebody may need that smile more than I do.
Yes, tremendously. So, you dealt with that with your brother. How bad did that affect your other siblings?
Well, at that point, it was just me, my oldest brother Steve, and Jeff. The three of us were the only ones. Were the only ones left.
Yeah.
My sister had passed away a few years prior to that, and my youngest brother had passed away when my daughter was like 7 months old.
Right.
But it changed things. His kids don't really come around anymore. It takes pulling teeth. That's why this is one of the reasons we don't really see each other or talk. She was like my little sister, and now I can't hardly get her to say hi back to me on Facebook. I told her I would do her daughter's senior pictures for free, and she could never get with me to have a date.
Yeah.
But I feel like it just put that it was that final nail in the coffin for our family to finally just, we're done. And,
Yeah.
My brother and I, we still get together on Christmas. We try to do things here and there. But, even then, he's working all the time. His wife has MS, and she's not in a good way. So he's her primary caregiver on top of working full time. So it was like the nail in the coffin for us to be a family, if that makes sense. I
Yeah.
love my family, and I still call them my family. Do not get me wrong in that aspect. I just don't get to see them as much as we should see each other as a family who's still alive.
But that's pretty sad that a brother who dealt with that kind of stuff was kind of still holding the family together, so to speak.
Yeah, well,
You know.
because it was the three of us, and we had to
Yeah.
be there for each other.
Yep.
And that's how we looked at it. And it was finally to the point after Michelle's passing that things felt halfway decent. And we thought that, and I'll be honest, I thought that Christmas was going to be one of our best Christmases because, with Jeff living there, and as well as Jeff and them were getting along, Jeff and Steve were getting along. I was like, this is going to be a really great holiday. I was really, really looking forward to it. And it just kind of all came crashing down. And, we still got together for Christmas, of course. The girls came late. His kids, Jeff's kids came late. But we still got to see them. But that was like the last Christmas, like one of the last, I haven't seen them for Christmas in 3 years. They just don't come. So they have other plans that changed last minute to always seem to coincide with ours.
So, and do you think that that's because it would be just too hard for them to
I wonder if that's
part
of it, if it's harder on them
just because of the memories,
Yeah,
because that's, I can tell you, for me, if I was in their shoes, it would probably be hard. But now that I'm older and I think a little bit wiser, I have to think on that. Like, but as my wife gave me the side eye because I said I think I'm a little bit wiser. Well, I'm wiser now than I was, let's say, 5-10 years ago. I would do it now, even though it's hard. It took my dad's death for me to start building that relationship back with my family. Let's just be honest.
Well, a lot of times, and here's the thing: a lot of time with death in a family, especially if it's something major, it either makes or breaks the family.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was so little of us left that our family was like, okay, I think we're done.
You either stick together like glue or you fall apart.
And because the age difference is a big difference, but it different times and different lives. But I love my family, and if my niece were to ask me to come and she's like, Aunt Carrie, I need you now, I would be like, where do you need me and when? I would still definitely jump for them.
Yeah.
May not be, I may ask a few more questions than I normally would. But
yeah,
I would still be there.
Especially after like a long time of not reaching
right.
out. Yeah. Of course, the first thing in your mind is like, okay, what do you want?
Right. Well, it's
like why are you just
what do you need now?
me?
Or yeah. But a lot of times, they don't contact unless they absolutely need something. So, I may just ask, are you safe? And do I need to be there right now? But yeah, I would definitely still be there for my family in a heartbeat. It's just, Not
Yeah.
something I think everybody considers a priority anymore.
Yep. Sorry, I just got a message across the screen from my mom about talking about uh, a member of our family. So that's what you heard going on in the background. Yeah, and I remember when I was a little kid. I'm sure you've had these in your family reunions. Remember those?
Right. Like
The-
I actually did some t-shirts for Laura Eggers because her family's getting ready to have a family reunion, and it cropped up all kinds of memories for me because I was like, oh my gosh, I miss having family reunions because my mom's side of the family had family reunions all the way up until I was in high school. And I
yeah,
remember going to them once a year, and it was down southern Indiana. And then it just didn't happen anymore.
yeah. You don't. It's like for me. I don't know now if anybody in my family still does them, and that's the thing now with the older generation. They're the ones that kept those going on when we were
Right.
even from when I was a kid going to my teenage years. The It's like, yeah, but you look forward to that. Now it's like this is your family reunion, you know,
Yeah.
Facebook or anything, it's like that's what I miss. I miss that, you know,
The
and
one-on-one, the
yeah,
human interaction part of it.
or it takes I hate to bring it up, but it takes death in the family to get everybody together,
Yeah. It
you
it
know,
takes it can take a death.
yeah, like it shouldn't take that for us to still have that bond with our families, you know,
But
um,
sometimes that's what has to
yeah.
happen, unfortunately.
It does, and sometimes that can be the wake up call that families need. It's I mean, like I don't know, like for me, it was okay. I have to stop being Kyle and start being Kyle, if that makes any sense.
It
You know,
does.
um, and it did. It took a death for me to be closer to my family, and I'm gonna be honest. I and she's gonna hear it because she's sitting across the room. It really took my wife for me to be closer to my family because I think my family really likes my wife more than they do me. So, but that's most people in the breeding community also love my wife more than they do
I
me.
was gonna say I kind
Uh,
of like your wife too.
right? That's just, but it's that's the sad thing about the reality of life these days is that it takes tragedy in people's lives to make or break things, you know, and it shouldn't.
Yeah.
And so nobody should be afraid to reach out and say, "Hey, I need help." Like
Oh, and
I
and
I, I just
like
need
I
to talk
said,
to
if
you.
she were to ever do
Yeah.
that, I would 100%
Uh,
jump for her because she doesn't reach out. So I know if she's reaching out for help, she really needs help.
yeah. But like you said, you would question things, and
Oh, I would definitely make sure of the situation I was going to walk in on
yeah, and
before
because
just.
we've all, and like I said, we've all had those people in our lives that I like to call the crier wolf syndrome. Uh,
Right.
every time they turn around, they're asking for help, or they're asking, why is this happening? Why is that happening? You know, somebody help me out. But then they get mad if nobody helps them out, and it's a lesson that I learned is that we have to help our own selves out as human beings. We have to put in some work because if we don't put in work, things aren't going to change in our lives. You know,
Right.
and and that's and that's
And
that's
sometimes learning to say no is part of that work.
yes, yep. Learn to say, I've helped you enough. It's time for you to, you know.
Or I've jumped enough
Uh,
for you.
well, and it's also a mental strain
It
on
is.
you, the the person who's helping, you know, and sometimes helping can be a little bit enabling if that makes sense,
Yes.
you know.
And you have to take into consideration the family member's personality as well.
Yes, but I It's just sad. It's just sad that the state of things these days to where suicide is more present and suicide has become the answer, if that makes sense. You know,
I
it's
do. I understand
it's,
that.
it's suicide or getting hooked on any type of drugs. You know, here in Ohio, heroin's really big. You
Oh,
know,
really? See,
it's crazy.
I didn't ever literally ever touch drugs until I was like 42.
Yeah. Well,
And even then it was just a little bit of the you
that
know,
that
the
green stuff. Yeah, yeah.
green stuff.
Yes. The stuff that you can find sometimes in people's pastures or backyards or wherever.
Right,
But
right.
but but that's sad that that's the way that this world has become simply because people are people are afraid to ask for help.
Yeah.
You know, simply because of rejection. Rejection sucks. I'm here to tell you it sucks. But
And here's a lot of times, you know, like you have sometimes it's easier to ask for forgiveness.
yeah,
So, you know, I always try to tell that to people, like, you know, don't be stupid, but if you know it's going to work and you know it's going to give you what you need from it,
yep.
then, you know, like I said, just don't be stupid about it. But, you know, do what you need to do and don't be afraid to do it.
And if you fail,
If you fail, then that is a lesson.
yes,
You didn't you
because
didn't fail. You
you
just are
tried it.
learning a better way to do
Yeah.
it.
And that's what I want people to know is that you'll never fail if you ask for help. You know, because you may not think that somebody's there to,
But
but
somebody will listen.
yeah, somebody
Somebody
always, yeah,
will always be
yeah.
there.
Because don't be another statistic. Don't be another body 6 foot under. You know, don't be another addict on the street. You know, heck, don't be another homeless vet on the street. You know, I mean, how many? Well, okay, for me because I'm in a much bigger city than you are.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
was gonna say there's nobody homeless in
the
your town.
the homeless population, especially with the vets,
Right.
it's crazy. Now, of course, we get in that whole thing, because you see them, homeless vet. Uh, but that's the thing. You shouldn't have to question whether or not somebody's a veteran or not these days, you know. But we've all heard of stolen valor, things of that nature. It's
Yeah.
you know, but
Because
again,
they
that's
see that
just
people like that get more money or get
yeah.
given to more or whatever. Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a sad state of reality is that there definitely needs to be more done across the board in dealing with veterans, PTSD, um, especially for the families. You guys.
Well, and I feel
Is that
sorry.
is
Somebody's
that?
at the outside the car. They're measuring stuff out. I'm in a parking lot, and
I was gonna say.
they're
I was
gonna
gonna
have
say.
like a
Is that?
music festival this weekend. And
I
I
was
knew
gonna
one
say.
of the girls.
Is that? I was gonna say. Is that Mark making funny
No,
faces
no,
at you?
it's not Mark. It was one of the girls outside. But I'm sorry. Where were we?
Yeah.
Because I didn't
Well,
expect her to come up to my car and
well,
stick her tongue out at me.
it's like you like with me when I was in AA, they had a thing called Al-Anon, which was
Yeah.
for family members of people who were dealing with alcoholism, stuff like that. It's because
Well,
you went to that because that was a support meeting for you, you know, the family to know, hey, this is how you can deal with this,
right. And
alcoholic at the
they
time.
should also set up help like for when we did bury my brother, we did have a 21 gun salute. We were very
Yeah.
fortunate for that. I also feel that a member of the military should have been there to console or offer to console
But
anybody
because
in the family, but that was not there nor an option.
yep, and that's because of suicide. Because I had a friend, I had a good friend of mine named Richard who committed suicide, who was a Marine, but because he committed suicide, the Marines themselves said that they could not perform any type of military duties because of that.
Now,
Now,
see, I did have the 21 gun salute.
yeah,
My kids and I both, we all three of us still have the shell from it.
yeah. Luckily, the junior ROTC where he went to high school at, they
They
because
came
they
in
knew Rich,
before.
yeah, because they knew Richard, they said, "Hey, we'll step in and we'll perform this
Yeah.
ceremony." And that's the thing. It's suicide happens a lot, and just because somebody in the military may commit suicide, that they serve their country, so they still
I was
deserve
going
that
to say, they
respect.
still put their lives on the
Yeah,
line to make sure we didn't have to. Doesn't make them any less than a person.
yeah. Well, we are coming up on almost an hour, and
Yeah, I see that.
I don't want to keep you too long because I know you're in your car and people are trying to work around you. But let's get into what you're doing today, positive in the community to help others out. Well, you got this company that you do a lot for the breeding community. I saw earlier the bearded flamingo.
There we go.
Yes, it's y'all. They do amazing work. They are eager to help anybody, bearded or non-bearded. Um,
Yeah. Like, there was a suicide support group in Southern Indiana that I worked with shortly, and made them products for their upcoming events and stuff like that. Doesn't have to be bearded.
yeah.
I will more than happy. I will give you a good price because my heart goes out. I love I love the community, and if I need to help your community, help you raise money to help your cause, let me know. Let me see what I can do for you,
They they
because
they even do they even do cool stuff like this. Right?
yes, I
This
do.
Yes, that design right there was actually designed by Carrie. I went to her and started talking to her because I want to have a secondary design done for the podcast, and we floated ideas around, and this happens to be the one we came up with, um, simply because mental health. It's nobody fights alone.
Nobody fights
Nobody
alone,
nobody
and,
does.
and
Yeah.
seeing that with that fighting with the colon there, you gotta,
Yep.
that means that we do this together.
Yep. And you say that, and I have it. It's
Yep.
it's
And I need
tattooed
to,
right here. Yeah. Um, that's because um, my story's not done. Neither is anybody else's for that matter. Um,
exactly.
so I like to wrap up my podcast asking my guests just to give out like a positive words of affirmation or anything that what can you tell somebody, and I think we've kind of said it enough tonight, who's going through crap, who's going through stuff in their lives and they don't know what to do. What's one thing you can offer them?
Always smile at someone and ask how they're doing. Even if you get that "I'm fine," if you can tell it's a "I'm fine" and they're not fine, just make sure you look at them in their eyes and say, "Well, if you ever need to talk."
Yeah,
You may never see that person again, but they'll remember that and be more likely to talk to someone.
that is totally correct. Well, I thank you for taking the time out of your busy day. Um,
Well, thank you.
thanks for driving to the next town over, uh, to
Internet.
internet. Yes, and yeah, just thank you guys. Thank you and Mark. You
Well,
guys are
thank
so
you.
awesome. It, even with Mark being the jokester, but thank you,
Mark has
thank
a
you.
very big heart. He's a good guy.
Uh,
There's a reason I've been married to him for 26 years.
you know what? If my wife puts up with me for 23 more years, then Lord have mercy, I'll be one lucky man.
There you go.
Yeah, she's just like she's counted out loud. But I appreciate you. I'm gonna kick you to the back and I'm gonna wrap up the show. But I'll be with you in a moment. All right.
All right.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks everybody for joining in tonight, and thanks to all of you who will rewatch this. I appreciate you all. Tune in 2 weeks. I may or may not have an episode in 2 weeks. I'm not really sure because my wife at the end of the month is going to have rotator cuff surgery. So I might be playing Mr. Nurse and attending to her. But if I happen to have an episode in 2 weeks, I'm going to have on Laverne Friesen. He's an awesome gentleman I met. He's a self-love coach. He's a mental health advocate. He is a cycle breaker. He's all about breaking the stigma. He's going to be my guest on that particular night, and we're going to talk about everything that he has going on in his life. If you want to check him out, you can check him out at https podcast.a. You can actually listen to his story, and here's his Facebook right there, Laverne Friesen. Great gentleman. I'll have him on in 2 weeks. With that, have a great weekend. Again, happy Father's Day to all the dads out there, and be kind and do something kind for somebody else.